they can just use our WayScript service to post directly into Slack and update the team on their report information. And if we have one that's new to the workspace, we're sending them a personalized welcome note or some kind of product information for joining our Slack workspace. So for this last tool, what we're doing is we're creating a direct message between two users. Hey everyone, like you've already seen, I want to show you some awesome Slack automations that we can create to help speed up our workflows. We'll be going through several different tools in this video, so if only one interests you, feel free to use the timestamps down below to skip to that part of the video. With all of that said, let's get into the first one. We'll be creating all of this with the Slack API and WayScript. So let's jump over to the WayScript interface to get started. Jumping over to the WayScript interface, there's several different reasons that we'll be using WayScript to do this. One of those reasons is that we already get pre-configured environments that we can build our application into. So if it's ever important that I share this application with anyone else, we're all going to be working in the same environment. Since it's already set up and already configured, then all I have to worry about is coding. So I can get straight into coding by clicking New Layer, and then I can say something like Slack API Service. Once I have that, I'll click on Create Layer, and what this will do is create a layer in that workspace of my company tools that was on that previous screen, and it will share it with anyone within that workspace. So I can invite other members to my team, and we can all work on this together or use the tools that I create and have access to everything that I do. Not only is it much easier to maintain and share with my teammates, but we get a ton of tools that are already built into the environment that I don't have to create myself. Things like logging and process tabs are already built in, so we don't have to create those. Then we get a triggers file so we can automatically deploy. Then we get secrets, environment variables, and a lot more. There's a ton more linked down below about why WayScript is so good for applications like this one. But with all of that said, let's get into actually creating our application. So I don't want to code too much in this video. I'd rather just explain how we're doing it and let you be able to create your own tools. So we have a template that we'll start off with, and that is over on our GitHub. This is linked down below too, so feel free to go and copy this, and you can just upload it directly into WayScript. So I'll copy all of that over, and then I'll cut back. Once we have all of this code copied over, what we're creating is a Flask application. As a system administrator, I want to be able to give my teammates or my coworkers the ability to use my access to a bot and automatically post messages to Slack. However, I don't want to just give away my authentication keys or my bearer tokens to everyone on my team. Instead, I'd like to manage that in one place so I can go revoke it or update it as I need to and not have to worry about spreading it back out to all my teammates for them to use it again. So what I can do, and what we're doing in this video, is we're creating a Flask application on top of the Slack API. That way, people can hit our Flask application where we can store secrets into our environment, and they can use all of those methods without needing a key. The cool thing about doing it this way is that I don't have to worry about the security of my application because WayScript is SOC 2 compliant. I also don't have to worry about distribution of those keys or rotating keys, and instead I can worry about my one single key, and WayScript will take care of all the permissions for me. So it makes my life 10 times easier as the system administrator building tools for my team. So this Flask application, what it will do each time is we'll create an authentication that will send to Slack using my one single bot OAuth token, which I'll show you how to go through that process in just a second. Then what we'll do is we will create our own routes for users to be able to hit our created API, and we'll get information back from the Slack API using my authentication values. Building our API on top of Slack's API may seem kind of strange at first, but hopefully you'll see how powerful it is by the end of the video. And if not, we have more resources linked down below as well. So once we have all of that taken care of, now what we'll need is this token from Slack. So as the system administrator, I need to go to Slack and get a token that we can start using these resources with. The rest of my team doesn't need to because I can store it in this environment. So to store tokens safely inside of WayScript, what we can do is click this plus button in the top left and then choose .secrets. Here we're creating a bot token value, but we'll need to go get it first. So let's jump over to Slack and I'll show you how to get those tokens. So going to the Slack API, what we'll need to do is sign in first. Then we can choose from your applications up here. I'll click this button and we'll go through the process of creating a new one. We'll click from scratch. We'll say YouTube tutorial, and I'll choose the workspace that I want to install it into. Then we'll click on create app, and this will create that application for us. Now, what we have to do at this point is install our application. So we'll go to install, and you see we need permission scopes. These scopes are what gives us access to the specific API resources on Slack. So a scope, just think of it as a permission. Then we'll click permission scopes. We'll go down and we'll choose the scopes we want to add. You can find the specific scopes that you need for your API calls by going through their documentation. A good practice for scopes and tokens is you only want to provide scopes that the user needs to do the actions that they have to do. You don't want to overassign scopes because you're giving more access away than what you need to. So ideally, you don't want to use all the scopes that I'm using in this video, only the ones for your specific function that you need. But for our first example, I'm showing you how to post a message using their API. So I'll need those scopes. Those scopes include chat write as our bot token, and we'll need OAuth tokens. We'll need the same one, chat write. Awesome. Once we have those, we'll need to go and install our application. So we'll go back to install app, then we'll install to workspace. We'll give access that we've already set up with those scopes. And now you see we get a bot token and an OAuth user token. In this example, we're only using the bot token because I want to create a Slack bot to do these types of actions. But if you want your own user account to do it, you would use this token. We'll copy this token, and you don't want to share this with other individuals because it gives them full access. So instead, what we can do is go back to WayScript here. We'll click on create new secret, and we'll say bot token. We'll paste in the value. We'll click add secret, and this should create a new secret that we can access from our app.py file. This bot token name is important because in our app.py, we're going to our environment variables and we're getting bot token. So if you want to name it something different, just change this line of code here. And if you copy this code over from GitHub, we already have our Slack service set up on WayScript. So we have several different routes that we can use. Our last step will be to deploy this to a URL that's protected by permissions on our WayScript group. So what that means is only people in our workspace can access that URL to get those resources, which is perfect for us because we don't have to worry about tokens for our team. To set that private URL up, what we'll have to do is go to .triggers. We'll select new trigger. We'll choose deploy. This is a Flask application, so we'll say Flask run. We'll choose a port. So I will say 880 and then host 0.0.0. All right, so this is our command to start up a Flask application. We'll make sure the port is matching to our command, and we'll click on run. Now, what this is doing is creating an API. I do have a simple homepage set up that is nothing more than just a string of text saying from index.html. But I set this up in case you want to create some type of API reference for yourself. Once this is finished deploying, what we'll do is copy that endpoint and we'll go to it. All right, and this is that simple homepage. It's not much, but you can create your own to go along with your API if you want to. What that means is that we've successfully set up our Flask application, and now we have access to all of these routes within it. So as you can see, we have a few different routes. We can get channels, get users, open direct message conversations, post messages, and update messages. What that means is now people can start interacting with their own API at this URL, and we can use those routes. So like get users, and people can get information from our API. That's essentially setting up the service. Now I want to show you how we would use this in practice with actual tools that we might want to develop for ourselves. These are the tools that we went through at the very beginning. So first, I want to show you how we can post a message once we've run a report on our local machine. Now that we have our service set up, what we can do is start interacting with that API either from our own local machine or within WayScript itself. In this example, let's say that I want to create a report, and when that report finishes, I want to send a message to Slack, letting everyone know the values of that report. We'll have a few dependencies in order to do this. We'll need the request library. That way we can access our API and send posts and get requests to it. We might want date time and something to generate our report, and I'll be using pandas in this example. To get the current time so we can pass it on to our Slack message, we might use some code that looks like this. Using that date time library, all we're doing is getting the current time, and we'll pass that on to Slack. That way we know what time the report was generated. Slack also has a timestamp, so this might not be the most useful, but I figured I would include it. Next, we'll process a little bit of data in a local Excel spreadsheet that I have using pandas to do that. So I have a local Excel spreadsheet called reportnumbers.xlsx, and all I'm doing is creating a data frame that has the information of the totals of those products. The report isn't important. I just want to show you that we can do something locally, create these values, and then pass it along. Now we'll code this out. This is where we'll update team using Slack service. This endpoint, remember, is private, so we'll need to pass in a WayScript authentication bearer token to get access to it. Within WayScript, we can go and get our token by going to settings, and here we have application keys to the left. We'll click this and you can copy this value, and we'll pass this as a bearer token to WayScript so we can access those Slack resources. So that bit of code, we'll put it in our headers and it'll look like this. Next, we'll say something like service URL, and we'll go and get that. So we'll jump back into that workspace, and this will be on our trigger. We'll just copy this endpoint. This is the endpoint that we'll send the request to get information back from Slack. So I will paste that in. Next, we will concatenate that string. So we'll say post message, and we'll say service URL. We'll concatenate that string, and we'll go and grab that route from our service. So all these routes, remember, are in our app.py, and this one looks like it is post message, and say post message. Looking at the code of this example, you see this comment here. It says it requires a channel and then one of text, attachments, or blocks in the payload. In this example, we'll have a channel and text. We'll go back and we'll say something like payload. This will be a JSON, so we'll say channel. We will put it in general, and then our text will just be our string of products produced. This will pass along our report information onto Slack. Now, let's say response will be equal to requests.post, and we'll pass in the URL. So our post message, we'll say headers will be equal to headers, and then JSON will be equal to our payload. Now we can say print response.content. Once we have all of that, just to recap what this tool is doing, we're allowing users on our team to create a local report, and they can interface with a bot that they have no credentials to. They can just use our WayScript service to post directly into Slack and update the team on their report information. And we can do that either locally or on WayScript itself. Now that we have all of this, let's say Python, and we will execute our script. So run report post slack.py. And once we hit enter on this, we should get a Slack message that gives us that report information, which we do. For our second tool, let's say that we want to create an inventory of user IDs of everyone new to the channel. This might be useful if you're onboarding new people, or if you're promoting a product to send new people to your channel an email or a direct message. We can get that list of new users by using this service as well. What we'll do is, let's say that we have some source to compare this from. This might be a JSON file on your local machine or a database. I'll keep it simple for this one and just say data.json and save it on my local machine. We'll need a new Python file, so we'll say get new Slack users.py, and we'll start coding. We'll copy a lot of this code from the run report one and paste it in. We don't need datetime or pandas for this, so we'll get rid of all of that code and we'll start coding in our request. Our base endpoint will be the same one, and our get users endpoint is /get users. So we'll change this to get users. Our method that we need to send can be a get request. So we'll change this to get here from a post request. We don't need a payload since it is a get, so we'll get rid of that. And now if we say print response.json and we'll pull out the specific key that we need, which is user IDs. We'll print this by saying Python get new Slack users.py, and we should get back all the user IDs in my workspace, which we do. Awesome. So if we want this tool to work in a way where we pull out new users from our workspace, then we need to compare our current information that we're saving to this new information that we're getting from the Slack API via WayScript. And what we can do in that case is we will get rid of this print statement. We will say our API will be all members, and to get our all members that we're storing, we'll have to read in that file. We can do that with a Python library called JSON. So we will import that, and we'll say something like stored users. These are just the ones that we've already added to the list. Open, and since we're in the same directory, I'll say data.json. Then our data will be equal to json.load. We'll load in stored users. This JSON was structured in a way where the key is user IDs. So we'll need to make sure that we say get user IDs. Awesome. So at this point, we have our old user IDs and we have the new ones from our workspace. We just need to compare the differences of those two so we get the user IDs and we can send them an onboarding message or something else depending on what our needs are. There's a ton of different ways to compare items from two different lists, but in this case, if I have any duplicates in my database, I kind of want to get rid of those. So what I'll use is a Python set. You can use your own method of doing this. You can use a list comprehension, and it all should work the same. I'll say something like new users. I want the final form of this to be a Python list, so I will convert it back. Then I'll say set to cast on a set type. We'll say all members, so this will be all the current IDs, and we'll minus it from a set of our current data. Then we will print new users. All right. Now, once we run this, we should get back all of our new users' IDs so we can send them messages if we want to. It looks like I have a misspelling. This time it should work. And we get back all the new user IDs so we can send them messages using a send message request. And we'll use that as our third tool in this video. So to recap this tool, what we're doing is we're pulling out all the user IDs of a Slack workspace. And if we have one that's new to the workspace, we're sending them a personalized welcome note or some kind of product information for joining our Slack workspace. For the last tool of this video, I want to show you how we could create a conversation with these new users as a direct message. We'll create a new file. I will copy over this information again into our new file. We don't need the report stuff, so I will delete that once again. And now what we can do is we'll keep our service URL. Our new one to create conversations is called open conversation. So I will copy this and we will paste that in. We will paste that in. Now our payload on this one is just going to be users, and we can see this information within here requires argument of users. So users, and what we'll pass in to that is a string of this. So we will copy this, and that's all we need. So for this last tool, what we're doing is we're creating a direct message between two users. We could pass information to it if we wanted to, but the important part is we've selected our two users and we're opening a conversation for them in Slack. So that's just a few of the Slack automations that we can build using WayScript and the Slack API. If you like this sort of content, please be sure to let us know in the comments below. But hopefully let's get you started. And just to show you a few more, if you want to dive into the Slack API, all we're doing is we're finding a method within the Slack API. So let's say we wanted to work with a reminders add. So we wanted to add reminders into our Slack workspace. What we would do is we would create paths in our Slack application, in our Flask application on WayScript, where the request URL is here, and we'd make sure that we had the appropriate scopes here. So we would make sure that our token has this appropriate scope. This path would be needed in our application, and we could build it out ourselves. As always, if you have any questions whatsoever about anything in this video, please let us know and we'll be happy to help you out. Until next time.